What is up, people? Dusty here, back with The Sims 2, and today I'll be partaking in one of the oldest Sims traditions. See, the series originally launched a few months before Survivor made its debut in America, and naturally it didn't take long before Sims players took some inspiration from it and began forcing their little helpless creatures into Last Sim Standing contest. Now in The Sims 1, this was usually accomplished by just forcing them to fight, as the loser would usually be kicked out of the neighborhood. However, that's not the case here in The Sims 2, so being eliminated from this contest will have far more fatal consequences. Now the premise of this is simple. I've put 8 Sims under one roof, and as the title indicates, the last Sim standing will be declared victorious and get to walk away with the winner's purse. Now aging will be turned off to give Abe here a fair shake, and they'll also be using cheats to restock the fridge, but other than that, these 8 Sims will be left to the whims of their AI and the mercy of the game's RNG. And while the house has all the amenities necessary to survive, there's only one bed and one toilet, so it won't take long before things start to become a little uncomfortable. Also, it should be pointed out that I actually had these Sims do their photo shoots on different lots, where I also had them all flirt with one another. See, Sims in The Sims 2 will never make the first move on an acquaintance unless they've been directed to previously by the player, and if all the reality TV I've been forced to watch by various women throughout my life has taught me anything, it's that an excess of horniness and romantic misadventures is absolutely key to this sort of thing. The other main ingredient is catty individuals spouting off the most out-of-pocket shit you've ever heard in your life, but sadly The Sims can't really provide for us in that regard.
Do I like Pumpkin? No. Do I respect Pumpkin? No. Does Pumpkin still need a facelift? Yes.
Now upon arriving at the main house, the contestants immediately began enjoying its amenities and getting better acquainted. Dance parties and hot tubbing were popular ways to pass the time when they weren't attempting to get into each other's pants, and the first day had a festive atmosphere as the consequences for failure had yet to really dawn upon them all. However, once day turned to night and Cooper here managed to claim the bed for himself, the mood began to change as the lack of suitable sleeping conditions soon began to take its toll on the other members of the household. While Jesse was able to catch a nap on the couch, the rest of the housemates weren't quite as fortunate, and most had to settle for passing out wherever they happen to be standing. Of course, in The Sims, discovering that somebody has nodded off in the bathroom isn't just an extremely concerning inconvenience, it can bring an entire household to its knees as Sims get stuck in the loop of shooing each other out of the way, only to get annoyed when some are unable to comply, which inevitably leads to a whole bunch of accidents. Now if I'm being honest, partway through the second day, I was expecting Desmond to live up to the old horror stereotype and be the first one eliminated, as he let his hunger drop to precariously low levels before passing out, and even after he woke up, he spent way too long trying to get to a hot dog that was unknowingly being blocked off by Melissa. To my surprise though, he eventually abandoned that to stuff his face to the fridge, and then a few hours later passed out face first in a bowl of mac and cheese, which was actually a smart play, as it meant he'd have a meal waiting for him as soon as he woke up. Instead, Lucy would be the first Sim to take the plunge, and I mean that quite literally. Now I have absolutely no idea what compelled her to go for a late night swim when her energy meter was completely drained. I mean, I had built the pool with this exact sort of thing in mind, I just didn't think any of them would actually be dumb enough to indulge me.
You did. You crazy son of a bitch, you did.
Anyway, Desmond supposedly took the loss of Lucy pretty hard, as the two of them had apparently been hooking up off camera, but it's pretty hard to tell from his demeanor. Also, Alicia's decision to go for a swim like 2 minutes after everybody finished mourning might not have been the best way to honor Lucy's memory. Now, if you've seen some of my other Sims 2 videos, then you might be aware that in addition to thinning the herd, the death of Lucy also introduced another hazard into the proceedings, as ghosts in The Sims 2 are extremely vengeful assholes who seem to think it's their duty to drag as many of their friends and family down to hell with them as possible. However, after one early appearance where she ruined the yard and gave Desmond an unwanted surprise, she seemed pretty content to chill in the afterlife. And while I'm sure this was appreciated by the contestants, it could be argued that it was even crueler for Lucy's ghost to drag this contest out even longer to maximize the amount of suffering and heartbreak. I mean, Desmond honestly may have gotten off a little easy considering his relationship with Lucy had never developed beyond a little crush before she was ripped away from him. Meanwhile, Cindy and Abe were getting along so well that they had seemingly even started to engage in a little role play where Abe played the part of a disappointed father figure, which is cool if that's what you're into, I guess, while poor Melissa had to suffer through the indignity of watching Cooper openly flirt with Alicia right in front of her face, which definitely isn't cool if that's not what you're into.
Get yourself something to drink, wash up, fuck my wife, watch TV, anything you want.
And Cooper's attempt to act like the whole thing never happened in the first place certainly wasn't appreciated. I guess I should also point out that while I had decided to cheat to keep the fridge stocked throughout the duration of this contest, bills were another matter entirely, so the repo man would begin to frequently pop up. However, the the bathroom sink was honestly the only thing of importance that he ever took. I mean, losing out on the bookshelf could have been a big deal if these illiterate bastards had ever shown any interest in reading, but most of the time he just swiped something like decorative plates, and while I was pretty upset about this, I doubt any of the Sims actually care too much. I also eventually got tired of watching most of the house spend their time just hanging about in the hot tub, so I eventually decided to sell it off and get a telescope and exercise bike instead. Having some new animations to film wasn't the only reason for the change, as the exercise bike was also a great way to tire Sims out, which would in turn make it far more difficult for them to maintain the rest of their needs. So of course, this had absolutely nothing to do with the next death, as instead Jesse would start a fire while cooking up some hot dogs, which naturally caused most of the other survivors to flock to it and jump around like a bunch of headless chickens. Now Cooper was enjoying some much needed bed rest, which led him to miss almost the whole thing, while Abe apparently just couldn't be bothered to care. It looked like Cindy might skip out on it as well, but I guess she got bored with mopping up puddles as she would eventually join in, and despite being a late arrival, she would somehow wind up being the only casualty. Now this would manage to grab Abe's attention, but immediately after he finished the initial morning process, he would head back inside for some refreshments. This might sound a little cold-blooded, but it's not like hanging out with everybody else would have brought Cindy back or anything, and it would soon become apparent just how badly her death had affected the old bastard. And I'm not sure if all the attention Cindy's death was receiving had the ghost of Lucy feeling like she'd been forgotten somewhat, but whatever the case may have been, she decided to make her presence known, which proved to be the worst thing possible for Melissa, as she would find herself being literally scared to death. Now that we were down to only 5 contestants, I decided to make a few more changes in order to keep them from becoming too comfortable, and sold off the bed and love seat in the living room, so now if a Sim wanted to catch a few Z's, they'd have to do so out on the new patio couch. Truth be told though, by this point a lot of it would just come down to blind luck, as the house's residents were now at the mercy of the various ghosts, and they weren't feeling all that benevolent. Melissa would end up getting the last laugh against Alicia, then immediately set her sights upon poor Desmond. Then the next night, Cooper gets taken out by the ghost of Lucy, leaving Abe and Jesse as her final 2 contestants. It was looking like Abe would come out on top when Jesse found himself being harassed by some of the vengeful spirits, but Jesse would actually survive these ordeals, and then the following morning, Abe just seemed to give up as he really prioritized his comfort for some reason, and the old man just allowed himself to starve to death, handing Jesse the victory on a silver platter. Now, I'll admit, it wasn't exactly the most thrilling conclusion, but you know, sometimes that's just what happens when you leave things up to chance. And now that the contest was over, Jesse had no desire to spend any more time in this hellhole and immediately used some of his newly acquired wealth to purchase a very respectable home for himself, where he began to chronicle all of the horrors that he had just been forced to endure. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you didn't, then I have no clue why you'd still be hanging around by this point, like what are you even doing? But if you did enjoy it, then why not leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel, that way you can be kept up to date with all my latest content. Or don't, you know, don't let me tell you how to live your life. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, I'm out.